Hello everybody, this is Sherman again, coming to you from Tempo Trend Studios, Victoria, BC. And we're nearing this, we can see the light at the end of the COVID tunnel. I hope you can. So my second shot's in a couple weeks and feeling more optimistic. So I'm hoping that as you reflect on this time, if you go through all these or if you have been going through these lessons, you'll take something with you for this quarantine time, during which you're probably thinking, well, what a big inconvenience. Well, maybe some good things will come out of this, and I'm hoping they do. You never can tell, it's upon reflection, but sometimes an inconvenience is, as they say, an opportunity wrongly considered. So tonight I'm going to hit on a few things that expand on some things we've laid the groundwork for previously. So if you've been keeping up with these or going through in sequence, you're probably going to find that this won't be too much of a stretch to understand some of the things I'm going to present. One of the most commonly discussed items is components of music is the concept of modes. And I think it's even more confusing when I understand that some of the monks who originally assigned the names to these things got them wrong, and so the ones we're using aren't even the right ones to start with, so that makes it all more confusing. But in short, most people tend to think of a mode as some formula that you'd have to take a major scale and sharp the fifth step, sharp the, flatten the second, all this stuff. If it was that complicated, as I said to somebody one time, I don't think I'd want to ever play. I really wouldn't if it was that complicated. Let me explain it to you in a way that I hope simplifies it for you, and if you have to explain it to somebody else, maybe it'll make your life a little easier. It certainly makes my life easier. So I have a sheet. I'm going to reach ahead here. Excuse me for a second. This will be posted. We're getting our sheet together, as it were, for these things. So the links, I'm hoping, are going to get better all the time. So if you've seen a few that weren't right, bear with us. We're getting it. This is major key diatonic rows. So you've got them all here. The ones at the top, the first ones are the ones guitar players favor. You should learn them all. So these are the chords in each key and the assignment in Roman numeral 1, 2, 3, and 4. So you'll notice that in any key, the first chord is major, the second chord is minor, third is minor, fourth is major, fifth is a seventh chord, thusly named the 5-7 chord. 6 minor is also referred to as the relative minor, and some of you may know this already. If you don't, a little bit of theory that'll help you. And the 7th one is most rightly considered as a minor 7 flat 5, and you don't see that very much in rock. You'll see it more in jazz. The minor 7 flat 5, a diminished chord will work, and that's more common. So in the vernacular of music, you'll see it diminished. For example, in the key of C, you'll see a B diminished, as I have it marked here. And it's a very lovely way to get back to the one chord. So in music, the motion going through these chords, there's a pull, there's a gravitational pull from 1, say, to 4, so C to F, translated here, to G7, and G7 desperately wants to get back to the C. So there's a strong magnetic force, and if you understand that, it pervades everything. It's pervasive through classical music, jazz, folk music. You'll feel that gravity. Now, how does that relate to us with modes? Well, the scale that gave birth to these chords, now get this straight, I hope you can. The scale, each of these chords in these keys, it's not just a random assortment. You'll know it goes in alphabetical order to A, and there's no H, right? So then you go around. So you go A, B, C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C, D, E, F, G. So it goes in sequence, but the chords are based on the root note, which is the note of the scale. So the tones that we decided are the most melodic, the do, re, mi scale, if you want to say it that way, starting from C, goes all the way up the line, and upon each note a chord is built, stacking the notes symmetrically. We call them triads. So you stack those notes on there, and you're going to have a chord, and it naturally forms a major chord on the 1 note. On the 2 note, it forms a minor. Okay, so you can debate it all you want to, but that's just the way it worked out. As one of my students always says, Jesus wants it that way. So go with it. Spend more of your time acknowledging it and learning it and memorizing these. It'll be time better spent. You can debate it later if you want to get into the theoretical underpinnings of it. So, going across the line, those are the chords that were given birth by stacking tones on those scale notes. Each of those notes, C, D, it forms those chords. The scale that gave birth to those chords will provide the sustenance to feed those chords when you improvise. So each of those chords wants that major scale for food. It's the scale that gave birth to the chords. So I think of it that way. So when you're playing in the key of C, C, F, and G wants a C major scale. And you can add all the tricks that we've discussed, double stops and everything, but it's still, that's the underlying theory. So when you play across the line there, that scale works. Now, does that create great music? No, it's just another way of thinking what's legit and what's, legal and what's not legal. But you still have to address the melodic things. We discussed contour, we discussed all sorts of things. So those are the flavors that create great music. But this is the thinking, the gravity that underpins the whole thing. So I put a little loop on here, as you can do, for the key of G. So I strummed each chord 4 times, G, A minor, and so forth in sequence. And what I did was I looped that here so that I can play just a G scale. Now you know your G major scale. I'll put my sheet down now, over here. So here you can play any of them that we've seen. You have the major pentatonic sheet, which you can access, and play the donut notes. Add the little hollow ones, and you'll have... and go all the way across. So at first just play the scale simply, as I'm going to do, and you'll notice I'm going through all the chords, and it sounds just fine. So that creates the mode. So as I play the major scale, and I put it in G, by the way, since G is the key we favored. I skipped the key of C. You can double back and do them all. You got your Ionian mode, if you want to get technical. While we're on the G chord, my scale creates the Ionian mode. So in other words, you, the chord player, whoever you are, this in case it's a looper, has the power. It makes my scale create that mode. Okay? So that's a better way of thinking of it. You play the scale of the key, and the chord of the moment creates that effect. So in effect, let's call the mode the effect created by the mother scale against each of its sibling chords, you want to say it that way, all the family members. So as I go from G to A minor, B minor, C, D7, E minor, and in this case I used a diminished, just to show you it'll work. It's not grammatically correct, but you won't hear minor 7 flat 5 that much. So just a diminished chord, and you can get those out of any of my books. There's a diminished. Any of my sheets, I have the sheet coming your way with all the advanced chords. Okay, so I'm going to run this through and just play the G major scale, and you'll notice I don't have to do anything fancy. It sounds pretty much right. So here it comes. There it goes. There's G, A minor, B minor, C, D7, E minor, F sharp diminished, and G. Here it comes. I'm just going to play the scale. You'll notice that I wasn't particularly playing anything fancy. That's just to prove that you can't go wrong. Okay, so it's safety. You're safe, and that's called diatonics. It's in the family. So the non-diatonic stuff I've hinted to already, like when you go out to some of these outside chords in the blues, they deserve special treatment. But anything diatonic, you've got the right, you've got the green light on to use the major scale, okay? It doesn't guarantee great music, you still have to tweak it a little bit, but it'll work. So I'll tweak it a little bit. I'm not going to stay with this in this lesson through the whole lesson, but I'll tweak it a little bit. I'm just planting a seed here for you to think about. And here I go. I'll see if I can do this. There's C, here's D. So just by getting a little looser with it and nailing some of the chord tones for the chord of the moment, my favorite reference point, I think you can see that you can play through most progressions that are diatonic by having that understanding. So on the one chord, on Ionian, when the one chord, on G, I played the G major, that was Ionian. When an A minor chord played, I kept playing the same scale, essentially. And that's your Dorian mode. The third one is the Phrygian, and then Lydian over the C chord, Mixolydian on the 5 chord, the 5/7, and then you've got your Aeolian, which is your natural minor scale, and then on the last one it's called the Locrian mode, okay, and then you're back to diatonic when it returns to G again. You're back to the Ionian. So you can find those in various reference places and books, and stroke your beard while you're thinking about it over your eating your cornflakes or granola. And it's just the underpinnings of how our music works. So it's good to have your ice cream variations nailed down, you know, master your 1-4-5 in all those keys. For pop and country, I list here master your ice cream variations, which as you recall was 1 6 minor 4 5 7s and so on. And for jazz, make sure you master your 2 minor 5-7 1 chords. Those will often appear as 2 minor 7 5 9 or something. It could be a little more advanced or more shall we say sophisticated than just a garden 7th chord. And then your 1 chord might be major 7. So in G, you might, instead of having A minor D7, A minor D7 G, you might have A minor 9th, and then you might have a D 9th, go up to a D13, and then G major 7, or that's a G7, G major 6-9 with a major 7 in there. So G6-9 adds 7. So you can have all those clusters of chords as long as there's no non-diatonic outside stuff going on. You're okay. Okay, so I hope I've spelled that out properly. I'm sure you'll let me know if you're still confused. Don't feel bad if you are. I won't feel bad. I'll feel sad that you are, but I won't feel bad about it because it took me a long time to absorb that. You do more through just playing. Okay, next thing on the agenda tonight is the minor blues summary thing, and for this I really want to stop the camera if I could and just do a little bit of Sultans of Swing, and I'm going to show you how to use the minor scale that we use, the snake charmer scale we like to refer to it. So in a second here we'll click it off, and when I return I'll do the looper with a little bit of Sultans of Swing. I'm back again. This feels like deja vu for some reason. We're gonna apply the minor scale snake charmer minor scale. And remember, we had three of them. We had the natural minor scale, and we also had the Dorian mode, and we have the harmonic minor scale, aka the snake charmer scale, because it has that wonderful. So that can be applied to many situations, but one that jumped out at me a few years back was hearing Mark Knopfler doing Sultans of Swing, and it's when he did this. And I thought, my gosh, what is that? What's going on here? And I had to analyze the whole thing and try to understand the underpinnings of it. But really, when you approach a progression to jam over it, you don't look at each chord as a separate entity. I always talk about chord of the moment, and I hope you don't take that ball and run with it and say, well, I'm just going to go piece by piece, because then your solos will be a patchwork quilt. What you want to do is see if there's a logic, a thread running through the chords, putting them together in a grouping for as long as you can. And then when you have an outside chord, such as the A7 in Sultans of Swing, now you have a particular problem, but it also presents an opportunity to approach that chord with this snake charmer scale. So the one I'm going to use in this example, and I'm just going to touch on this because this is just a way of nudging you into seeing that you need these minor scales because they apply to other circumstances other than just playing Santana tunes or something. So if you recall, the progression is, and I put it on the looper here, I've given you extra time on each chord. So 2 bars of D minor, 2 bars of C, 2 bars of B flat, and 2 bars of A7. Now on the recording, if you remember all that goes, I think wrong tone there, but so, but in the singing part, the solo part, it runs down to A7. So D minor, C, B flat, A7. So on the A7th, I'm going to use a snake charmer scale. I'll run across it here. 5, 6, stretch 9, 5, 7, 8, 5, 7, 8. Next string, 6, 7, 5, 6, 8, and 5, 6, stretch 9. So with a little bit of tweaking, you can come up with some nice little contours, shall we say, going over those. And on the other ones, surprisingly, it's just a D minor scale, natural minor. That works for the C chord as well, which creates almost a mixolydian mode. And then when you go to B flat, I played a B flat major 7 there just to throw you, but it's a B flat. It creates this lush, what we would call Lydian mode. And tying in with that, I remember watching an interfaith show on TV, Comparative Theologies, and it was something about, I'm not sure if it was Sikh or if it was Hindu based. I'm not too much up on my cultures, but the music interested me because a woman was playing the harmonium and going and just keeping this tonality going. And so I think I mentioned this before in the previous thing about modes, installment about modes. Sometimes when you grind a chord against something, it sounds a little foreign to you. Well, in this one we have another Lydian thing where instead of going to, and I think that kind of sound is not, we're used to hearing, we are hearing not. I think Led Zeppelin had a song like that on the second album, Led Zeppelin 2, and it kind of tweaks your ear when you first hear it, you go, ah. But anyway, that's in there. So when you get to the B flat, that same scale, it grinds a little bit, but it creates a Lydian feeling, that bend. And then when you get to the A, you're doing this. So let's see if you can hear this and enjoy it, and then I'll move on, and I got to talk about one more item here. So here it goes. That's the C chord, B flat, and A seventh. So here I go with my D minor natural scale. Same scale. Same scale. Now you heard in there I actually played a note that was, instead of going against the A, so if I could play an A, you can hear it. You can get away with it because it's a bit of sass. If I play the chord with just the tritone and the root, that's the truer note, but you can get away with it. So you can see that once you get the essential scale, I could have gone, or I could have bent it. So hopefully that'll give you another example of the application of the harmonic minor scale, and we're using it against a 5 chord, so it's a D harmonic minor, but used against the A7 chord, so it's 5 chord of the minor key, if you were thinking of it that way. And the other chords I just sailed through with just natural D natural minor, aka F major scale, if you prefer to think of it that way, if you know it better by that means. But see if you can assimilate that. Now, to close this lesson, I have one more thing I wanted to present as far as major scales, to beef them up a little bit, make them enriched, as it were, so that you can have a sense of bringing them up at par, and I'm sure you can, to your other licks, your minor licks that you know so well. Most players start, they go right for that sass and anger and everything, and that's in the darker aspects of the minor pentatonic scale. But the crux of this whole thing from the beginning has been how to mix textures across a progression and not get locked into one thing, because each chord has its own little mood it creates. And if you can assimilate that and understand it and hold your favorite soloist to that standard, I think you're going to find, as I did, and I can't guarantee the outcome is the same for everybody, is that you hold them to that standard, you'll notice that you'll go so far with them, and there's a jump off point where you say, well, I like the fluidity of this player, or I like the tone of the guitar, or I like the double stops of this player. But then that's where you jump off and you say, but when the non-diatonic chords, the outside chords, he just glazes over them. Well, that's okay, you can forgive them those sins. They focused on what they focused on. You have to dance to your own drum, as they say. So march to your own drum. So what you have to do to bring up the major scales to a higher level, one aspect of this would be to excuse me, employ what I have heard referred to as the bebop scale, more specifically the major bebop scale. And not to get you scared or thinking we're going down a jazz road that won't apply to anything, it's just filling in the cracks. We talked about the harmonics, or should we say the chromatics, is the word I was going to say, but harmonizing the scale. Excuse me, I'm talking all day. So we have, on a pentatonic form 1, A, for A. Sorry, I'm not doing this in G, but I did this this chart some time ago. I'll show you the chart in a second. So on the second string, where you would go, the bebop scale goes, or backwards. Listen for that when I play these examples. In form 4, where you have, you'll hear, or listen for that and you'll hear it, okay? So I'm going to give you, excuse me for a second, reaching out of frame here. Here is the sheet, major bebop lines, okay, blues lines and phrases, and this will be posted. We're going to try to get these all nailed down for you. Be patient. I have my 21 favorites here. I'll just demonstrate a few of them for you, okay? In the interest of time. So I'll just play a few of these. Here's number 1, and then I'll demonstrate them more against an A blues, okay? So here's number 1. Oh, sorry, wrong fret. That would help. Blinded by the light. Here we go. A little faster. Number 2, slowly. Faster. Sorry. Yeah, missed a note, but who's counting? Number 3. A little faster. Number 4. Sorry, I got tangled up there. More of a time, I may fix one part there. There you go, number 5. And number 6. And so on, okay? So I didn't do any up here in form 4, but I will when I'm playing all of the blues. So I want to demonstrate some of these guys. So here's the key of A. Let's see what speed we're on here. I'll slow it down a little bit. That's not slowing it down. I'll just do it at the regular speed. Don't matter, I'm just demonstrating. Here we go. You like it? You hear it? You can hear it. Back to the A, here's form 4. So hopefully that shows you that sound. It's a delightful little and then when you go to the 4 chord, you could even do it on that for the D. Now, the danger zone, of course, is to let that be a thing and just milk it too much. So I think a little goes a long way. I probably played more of them in that example than I would want to, say, if I were jamming in a band situation, or if I were to be, shall we say, recording, listening to playback. I'd say, almost mimicking yourself. You don't want to do that too much. So try to keep the examples sparse. But when you do, if you place it properly, I think you'll find yourself really enjoying the effect that that creates, and it'll add a depth to it, and also a bit of swing. I think the swing element is missing from a lot of blues these days. So hopefully I've covered that effectively enough, and you can look at the sheet and maybe find some homes for some of those licks, and we'll talk to you next time. Good night.